Amara Jackson stood drenched in Jacksonville's sticky heat, her frail hands clutching a paintbrush as she finished her last canvas, vibrant reds bleeding into stormy grays, only to watch a white cop kick her street stall to splinters, snarling. No permits, no trashier. Her leukemia-racked body trembled, chemo funds slipping away with every shattered frame. Then, a sleek Bentley rolled up, and Darius Kane, a black millionaire, stepped out, locking eyes with her ruined art. He smirked, "I'll buy it all," leaving the cop stunned. What war had just begun? Before we dive in, let me know where you're watching from. If you stand for justice against all odds, hit like and subscribe for more stories of grit and triumph. Amara Jackson knelt in the humid Jacksonville dusk, her bony knees scraping the cracked pavement as she clawed through the wreckage of her art stall. Sweat plastered her faded blue tank top to her skin, the air thick with the stench of spilled paint and gasoline from passing cars. Her fingers, still tingling from leukemia's cruel grip, fished out a canvas slashed by Officer Brent's boot, its jagged edges mocking her. Vibrant yellows and deep purples bled together, a chaotic swirl she'd poured her soul into during a sleepless night between chemo drips. Each painting was a lifeline, a desperate bid to fund the treatments keeping her alive, and now they lay scattered like trash across 4th Avenue's gritty sidewalk. Her chest tightened, not just from the illness but from the sinking realization that her last hope might have just splintered into nothing. She'd set up here, at this bustling corner near the riverfront, because it was free, because she had no choice. Her mom, Tanya, had pleaded with her to stay home, voice cracking over lukewarm coffee that morning. "The streets ain't safe for us, baby. Not with you so sick." But Amara had shaken her head, braids swinging, her 13-year-old defiance burning brighter than the fever in her bones. "I ain't waiting to die, Mama. I can do this." Art had always been her refuge, the one place where needles and sterile white walls couldn't touch her. Now it was her weapon, her only shot at clawing back some control from a disease that didn't care about her dreams. She stacked the least damaged pieces against a rusty street lamp, her breath shallow, as she fought the dizzy spell creeping up her spine. The crowd had thinned after Brent's tantrum, leaving only the hum of cicadas and the occasional honk from a pickup truck. Then she heard it, the low purr of an engine, smooth and out of place amid the city's rough edges. The sleek black Bentley, from earlier idled at the curb, its tinted windows glinting under the fading sun. The door swung open and Darius Kane stepped out again, his polished loafers clicking against the asphalt. He was tall, maybe 6 feet, with a crisp white shirt rolled to the elbows and a silver watch catching the light. His skin was a rich brown, his jaw set like he'd seen worse days than this and come out swinging. Amara froze, clutching a torn canvas as he crouched beside her, his gaze sweeping over the wreckage. "This all you got left?" His voice was low, steady, like he was sizing up a deal. "Not a kid's broken dreams." She nodded, throat dry, too stunned to speak. He reached into his jacket, pulled out a thick wad of cash, and peeled off 20 crisp $100 bills. $2,000. He pressed it into her trembling palm, his fingers cool against her feverish skin. "Your art's raw. Genius, even. Don't let that pig ruin it." Amara stared at the money, her mind spinning faster than the world around. Her $2,000 could cover a chemo session, maybe 2 if they stretched it. She could almost hear Tanya's gasp, see her mom's tired eyes light up for the first time in months. Before she could stammer a thank you, heads turned. A fruit vendor across the street paused mid-pitch, his crate of oranges forgotten. 2 teens in sagging jeans slowed their strut, whispering, "That's Darius Kane, bro, the tech guy." Word spread like wildfire through the block, a ripple of murmurs and wide eyes. People knew him, the black kid from the projects who'd built a fortune coding apps, now worth millions. Strangers edged closer, drawn by his name, his presence, snapping pics of the scene. Amara's pulse raced. This wasn't just a sale, it was a spotlight she hadn't asked for. She tucked the cash into her pocket, the weight of it grounding her as she dared to hope. Maybe this was her break, the moment everything turned around. But then the mood shifted. A squad car screeched to a halt, its lights flashing red and blue against the Bentley's polished hood. Officer Brandt climbed out, his gut straining against his uniform, a crumpled ticket in his meaty fist. His pale face was flushed, eyes narrow as he stomped toward Amara. "Illegal vending," he barked, slapping the paper onto her rec table. $500, payable now, or I haul you in." His lips curled into a sneer as he glanced at her skin, her braids, her trembling frame. "Your kind don't belong here, cluttering up my street." The crowd hushed, tension crackling like static. Amara's stomach dropped. The ticket would eat half her windfall, maybe more with late fees. She opened her mouth to protest, but Darius stepped forward, his shadow falling over Brant. "She's with me," he said, voice smooth but edged with steel. He pulled out his wallet again, counted out 5 bills, and flicked them at Brent's chest. "Paid. Now back off." The cop caught the money, his scowl deepening, but he couldn't argue with cash. He crumpled the ticket, muttering under his breath as he retreated to his car. Amara exhaled, relief flooding her. She'd won, hadn't she? Darius had her back, and the cash was hers. For a moment, she let herself believe it. She pictured the hospital bill stamped paid, the relief on Tanya's face when she brought home enough to breathe easy. She glanced at Darius, his smirk, faint but real, and felt a flicker of something she hadn't in months, possibility. The crowd buzzed louder now, some clapping, others filming, the energy electric. She bent to gather her salvaged canvases, hands steadier than before, ready to call it a day. Then she heard it, the static crackle of Brent's radio from the squad car, his voice low but clear. "Yeah, back up to 4th. Got a situation with Kane and some kid. Not letting this slide." Amara's heart stuttered. She looked up, catching Brent's glare through his windshield, his eyes promising something darker than a fine. Darius followed her gaze, his smirk fading into a tight line. The cop peeled out, tires squealing, but the threat lingered in the air, heavy as the humidity pressing down on them. Amara clutched her paintings tighter, the $2,000 suddenly feeling like a target painted on her back. She dodged one bullet, but another was already chambered, and it was aimed straight at her. The sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows over the riverfront as Amara stood there, caught between triumph and dread. Darius's money was real, his words still echoing in her ears. But Brent's parting shot twisted her gut. She'd seen that look before, in the way nurses rushed past her at the clinic, in the way store clerks followed her mom down aisles. It wasn't just anger, it was hate, the kind that didn't quit. She glanced at the Bentley, its engine still idling, and then at Darius, who rubbed his jaw like he was calculating his next move. "You good?" he asked, voice softer now, almost like he knew what she was thinking. She nodded, forcing a small smile, but her mind raced. $2,000 was a lifeline, sure, but it had also lit a match in a city that didn't like her kind shining too bright. She could feel the eyes on her, not just the crowds, but something bigger, meaner, waiting. £2. The fruit vendor resumed his calls, the teens drifted off, but the air stayed charged, like a storm rolling in off the St. John's River. Amara tucked the cash deeper into her pocket, her fingers brushing the rough edge of a broken frame. She'd survived today, maybe even won a round, but Brent's radio call told her this wasn't the end. It was just the spark, and Jacksonville was about to catch fire. Amara Jackson stumbled through the chipped front door of their cramped Jacksonville apartment, the $2,000 from Darius Kane crinkling in her pocket like a lifeline. The living room smelled of stale cigarettes and Tanya's burnt toast from that morning, the frayed couch sagging under a pile of unopened bills. Her mom stood at the kitchen counter, her diner uniform wrinkled, her hands shaking as she counted loose change into a jar labeled Chemo Fund. Amara dropped her salvaged canvases by the wall, their torn edges catching the dim light of a flickering bulb, and pulled out the cash. "Mama, look." Tanya spun around, her tired brown eyes widening as Amara fanned out the 20s, hundreds stacking unevenly on the chip formica. "Where'd you get that?" Tanya's voice cracked, a mix of hope and fear tumbling out. Amara grinned, her chapped lips stretching despite the ache in her bones. "Sold my art. All of it. This guy, Darius Kane, he just walked up and bought everything." Tanya sank into a chair, pressing a hand to her chest, tears spilling over. Her lashes, 2,000. Baby, that's a whole session. Maybe more. For the first time in months. The lines on her mom's face softened, relief washing over them like a cool breeze through the muggy night. That week, Amara felt invincible. The hospital took the cash, scheduling her next chemo drip for Friday. And she could almost taste the freedom in it, the chance to keep fighting. She spent every spare hour painting, sprawled across her narrow bed with a thrift store easel, her frail fingers coaxing bold oranges and electric blues onto fresh canvases. Each stroke was a prayer, a middle finger to the leukemia eating her. Alive, she dreamed of more than just survival now, a real Booth, a name people knew, a life where she wasn't just the sick black girl from the wrong side of town. Tanya watched her, hovering with cups of lukewarm tea, her voice softer than usual. You're something else, Amara. Keep going. The apartment buzzed with a fragile hope, the kind that felt too good to trust, but too sweet to let go. Amara even sketched a plan on a napkin, bigger markets, maybe a gallery someday. She'd show Jacksonville she wasn't trash to be kicked aside. But the high didn't last. Monday morning, she hauled her new batch of paintings back to 4th Avenue, her sneakers scuffing the pavement as she set up a rickety card table. Tanya had scavenged from a yard sale. The riverfront hummed with early shoppers, their chatter blending with the slap of waves against the dock. She'd barely propped up her first canvas, a jagged mix of crimson and gold inspired by that Bentley's gleam, when Officer Brent's squad car rolled up again, slower this time, like a shark circling blood. He stepped out, his boots thudding, a yellow paper flapping in his hand. City ordinance, he snapped, tossing it onto her table. No vending without a permit. You're done here. Amara's stomach lurched as she scanned the text, public nuisance in bold letters, citing complaints from concerned citizens. She looked up, catching a smirk from a white vendor 2 blocks down, his produce stand pristine, his glare icy. He complained? She asked, voice trembling. Brant shrugged, his meaty shoulders rolling. Says your ghetto junk's scaring off his customers. Pack it up, or I confiscate it all. The crowd parted around them, some staring, others scurrying away, the air thickening with whispers. Amara's fists clenched, nails digging into her palms. I got money now. I can get a permit. Brant laughed, a sharp bark that made her flinch. Too late. Kid, you're out. She opened her mouth to argue, but a familiar engine growled. Nearby, Darius Kane's Bentley pulled up, gleaming black against the gray morning, and he stepped out, his tailored jacket sharp as a blade. Problem here? His voice cut through the tension, calm but heavy, like he owned the ground they stood on. Brent's smirk faltered, his hand twitching toward his belt. She's breaking the law. Kane, stay out of it. Darius didn't blink. He pulled out his phone, tapped a few times, and held it up. I own half this block. That ordinance doesn't apply to my tenants. She's with me. Amara's jaw dropped as Darius handed her a crumpled lease paper, his name scrawled at the top. Brent's face reddened, his lips thinning, but he couldn't argue with the proof. This ain't over, he muttered, stomping back to his car. The ticket fluttering to the ground like a dead leaf, Amara exhaled, her knees wobbling as relief crashed over her. Darius had done it again, swooping in like some kind of guardian, his power bending the rules in her favor. She turned to him, words tumbling out. How'd you even know I was here? He shrugged, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Heard about your hustle. Checked in. Good thing I did. She nodded, clutching the lease, her mind racing. With Darius backing her, she could keep selling, keep fighting. The crowd buzzed again, phones out, filming the showdown, and she felt a flicker of pride. She'd beaten Brant, hadn't she? The white vendor glared from his stand, but he couldn't touch her now. She started unpacking her canvases again, hands steadier, ready to turn this into something real. The sun climbed higher, baking the pavement, and for a few hours, she sold a dozen pieces, pocketing another $300. She texted Tanya a selfie with the cash, grinning like a fool. We're good, mama. The reply came fast. Proud of you, baby. Amara leaned against the table, letting herself dream again, the weight lifting just enough to breathe. Then, it happened. She'd gone home late, the apartment quiet except for Tanya's soft snores drifting from the bedroom. Amara sat on the couch, sketching under a lamp's weak glow, when a sharp crack split the silence. Glass shattered across the floor, a jagged hole blooming in the window above her head. She yelped, dropping her pencil as a brick thudded onto the carpet, its rough surface scrawled with black marker and asterisk 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 get out. Her heart slammed against her ribs, breath hitching as she stared at the slur. The letters jagged and hateful. Tanya bolted in, her robe loose, eyes wild. What the hell? She saw the brick and froze, her hand flying to her mouth, Amara's. Hands shook as she picked it up, the weight cold and heavy, the message sinking into her gut. This wasn't random. She thought of Brent's glare, the vendor's smirk, the way the city seemed to tighten around her every time she dared to rise. Dryas had saved her today, sure, but this was payback. A warning carved in stone that she wasn't safe, not here, not anywhere. Tanya yanked the curtain shut, her voice trembling. "We gotta call the cops." Amara nodded, but her stomach twisted. Brant was the cops. She dialed 911 anyway, her voice flat as she reported it. The operator's bored tone cutting deeper than the glass. "We'll send someone by," the woman said. Like it was a spilled soda, not a hate crime. Tanya pulled her close, arms tight. But Amara couldn't shake the chill. 2 officers showed up an hour later, neither Brant. But their shrugs said enough. "Probably just kids," one muttered, scribbling a useless report. No witnesses, no proof. They left without a second glance, the brick still sitting on the coffee table like a taunt. Amara stared at it, her victory from earlier souring. Fast, Dryas's cash, his clout, had bought her a moment, but this city didn't want her winning. She crawled into bed, the broken window letting in a hot breeze, her mind replaying Brent's radio call from yesterday. Backup was coming, all right, and it wasn't wearing a badge. Sleep didn't come easy, the slur echoing in her head, a promise of worse to follow. Amara Jackson sat cross-legged on the sagging couch, her thin frame dwarfed by the oversized hoodie she'd pulled on to fend off the chill, seeping through the taped-up window. The brick still sat on the coffee table, its hateful scrawl glaring up at her like a dare, but she refused to let it win. Her mom, Tanya, had swept up the glass, muttering prayers under her breath, her hands trembling as she nailed a warped piece of plywood over the hole. The apartment felt smaller now, the walls closing in with every creak of the floorboards. But Amara's resolve burned hotter than ever. She'd reported the attack to the cops, sure, but their lazy shrugs stuck in her craw. Kids, they'd said, like a racial slur on a projectile was some prank gone wrong. She knew better. This was Brant, or someone like him, flexing muscle to shove her back down. Tanya hovered near the kitchen, her voice tight. "We can't stay here if they're gonna keep coming." Amara shook her head, braids brushing her shoulders. "I ain't running, mama. Not after yesterday." She'd tasted victory with Dryas's cash, felt the weight of possibility, and no brick was stealing that. The next morning, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at Riverside Market. 10 a.m. got a fix for you." Dryas, her heart skipped, a jolt of adrenaline cutting through the fog of her latest chemo hangover. She threw on a faded denim jacket, grabbed her stack of canvases, and dragged Tanya out the door, her mom's protests fading under the promise of hope. Riverside Market sprawled along Jacksonville's waterfront, a maze of tents and stalls buzzing with tourists and locals haggling over shrimp and handmade jewelry. Dryas waited near a shaded corner, his Bentley parked discreetly behind a row of palms, his crisp navy blazer standing out against the casual chaos. He waved her over, his grin sharp. "That little setup on 4th, too small for you now. I'm funding a real booth here, prime spot." Amara blinked, her cracked sneakers scuffing the gravel as he pointed to a sleek wooden stand, twice the size of her old table, already rigged with shelves for her art. Tanya squeezed her arm, whispering, "This for real?" Dryas nodded. "She's got talent. I'm just giving it room to breathe." By noon, Amara's booth was a riot of color, her canvases glowing under the sun, swirling greens clashing with fiery reds, soft lavenders fading into midnight blacks. She'd painted half of them in the chemo ward, the other half in the sleepless hours since the brick, each one a scream against the world trying to crush her. People didn't just glance now. They stopped, wallets out, voices overlapping. How much for the big one? This yours? Kid, damn, she sold out in hours. $5,000 stuffing her pockets, her hands shaking as she counted it under the table. Tanya stood beside her, beaming, snapping pics for a scrapbook Amara didn't even know she kept. Words spread fast online, hashtags popping up. Hashtag AmaraArt, hashtag Jacksonville Prodigy. Strangers called her a star, a fighter, their comments flooding her. Cracked phone screen. She let herself grin, the ache in her joints fading under the rush. $5,000 could stretch her treatments for weeks, maybe buy Tanya a day off from the diner. For once, the leukemia felt smaller than her. Then the hammer dropped. A shadow fell over the booth, broad and looming, and Amara looked up into the cold blue eyes of Victor Grayson. He was older, maybe 50, with a salt and pepper buzz cut and a tailored gray suit that screamed money. His presence sucked the air out of the market, vendors quieting, shoppers edging away. She'd heard of him, real estate kingpin, owned half the city. A man who turned slums into condos and didn't care who got displaced. He crossed his arms, his voice a low growl. This your little show? Amara nodded, chin up, but her gut twisted. He smirked, thin lips curling. I own this land, and I don't allow handouts to freeloaders clogging my market with junk. The slur hung unspoken, but she felt it in his stare, the way his eyes raked over her skin. You're banned. Pack up. Her breath caught, the $5,000 suddenly, heavy in her pocket. I paid for this spot, she said, voice steady despite the quake in her chest. Grayson chuckled, dark and hollow. Not anymore. Before she could snap back, Darius pushed through the crowd, his jaw tight, phone already to his ear. Grayson, you don't get to call this. He hung up, turning to Amara. Give me an hour. True to his word, he returned with a local TV crew in tow, cameras rolling as he stood beside her. Booth, Victor Grayson thinks he can shut down talent because it doesn't fit his bigot playbook, he said, voice booming. This girl's art is worth more than his whole damn empire. The crowd erupted, cheers drowning out Grayson's scowl, phones capturing every word. The anchor, a weary blonde, shoved a mic at Grayson, who sputtered. This is my property, Darius cut in, holding up a deed. Not all of it. I bought a chunk last week. She stays. Amara's jaw dropped again. He'd outmaneuvered Grayson with cash and cunning, turning the market into her stage. Grayson stormed off, his polished shoes kicking up dust, but his glare promised hell. She hugged Darius, words failing her, and the booth roared back to life. Buyers doubling down. She thought she'd won, really won, the world bending for her at last. That night, she crashed hard, the chemo and adrenaline leaving her limp on the couch. Tanya humming in the kitchen over a rare pot of spaghetti. $5,000 sat in a tin box under her bed, a fortress against the next bill. She drifted off, dreaming of galleries, of Darius's grin, of a life beyond this rotting apartment. Then a sharp crack jolted her awake, the stench of smoke flooding her nose. She stumbled to the window, yanking back the plywood, and saw it, her new booth at Riverside. Now a pile of glowing embers, flames licking the night sky. Grayson's goons stood silhouetted against the fire, one tossing a gas can into the blaze, their laughter cutting through the crackle. Amara's scream woke Tanya, who ran in, gasping, oh God, no. The canvases she'd left to sell tomorrow, the shelves Darius built, all ash now. She sank to the floor, coughing as smoke drifted across the river, her lungs burning with more than just sickness. 5,000 wasn't gone, but the booth was. Her momentum torched by Grayson's hate. He hadn't just banned her, he'd razed her dreams to the ground. Tanya dialed 911, her voice shaking, but Amara knew what had come. More shrugs, more no proof. She stared at the tin box, then at the brick still mocking her from the table. Darius had humiliated Grayson on live TV, and this was his answer, a retaliation sharper than any ordinance. Her chest heaved, rage and despair clawing at her ribs. She'd sold out, felt the city cheer, only to watch it crumble in hours. Grayson's goons melted into the dark as sirens wailed in the distance, too late to save anything. Tanya pulled her close, whispering, we'll figure it out. But Amara's eyes stayed on the flames, the heat searing her resolve. Darius had power, sure, but Grayson had more. And he wasn't playing by rules. She dodged Brent's ticket, survived the brick, but this was war, and it was personal now. Amara Jackson slumped against the peeling wall of their Jacksonville apartment. Her thin legs stretched across the couch. The tin box of $5,000 clutched tight against her chest. The acrid tang of smoke still clung to her braids from last night's fire, a bitter reminder of Grayson's goons torching her riverside booth into a pile of ash. Her eyes burned, not just from the chemo's aftershocks, but from the tears she'd choked back watching her dreams curl up in flames. Tanya paced the tiny kitchen, her slippers slapping the linoleum. Phone pressed to her ear as she begged the fire department for answers. No evidence. They'd repeated, their voices flat, like Grayson's money had already greased the truth away. Amara's fingers traced the box's dented lid, her mind replaying Darius Kane's TV stand-down with Grayson. He'd made her feel untouchable, a prodigy rising above the hate. But now, the embers told a different story. She'd sold out at the market, pocketed enough to breathe, only to have it all snatched by a man who'd rather see her dead than thriving. Tanya hung up, her face crumpling as she sank into a chair. They ain't doing nothin', baby. Say it's just vandalism. Amara's jaw tightened, her voice rasping out. It ain't vandalism. It's him. Grayson's smirk flashed in her head, his cold promise to ban her now a blazing reality. She wanted to hurl the tin box through the busted window, let it smash on the street below. But she didn't. That cash was her lifeline, her next drip, her shot at outlasting this leukemia eating her from the inside. Then her phone buzzed, Darius's name lighting up the screen. Meet me downtown, noon. Got a new plan. Her pulse kicked up, a flicker of fight cutting through the haze. She hauled herself up, ignoring Tanya's worried frown, and grabbed a backpack stuffed with her surviving sketches. He's helping us, Mama. I'm going. Tanya sighed but didn't argue, just handed her a warm biscuit wrapped in foil. Be careful. Downtown Jacksonville shimmered under a brutal noon sun, the air thick with exhaust and river dampness. Darius waited outside a sleek glass building, its sign reading Kane Gallery in bold silver letters. He waved her in, his navy blazer swapped for a black polo, his grin wide but edged with something fierce. This is yours now, he said, gesturing to the space. High ceilings, white walls, spotlights primed to make her art sing. Grayson, can't touch you here. I own it outright. Amara's breath hitched, her sneakers squeaking on the polished floor as she took it in. She set up fast, pinning sketches to easels, her hands trembling with purpose. That night, the gallery opened, a swarm of buyers flooding through, hipsters in beanies, suits with fat wallets, locals who'd seen her viral clips. Her art sold like wildfire, $10,000 piling up in a single evening, each sale a middle finger to Grayson's arson. She grinned through the nausea, posing for pics, her name buzzing online again. Tanya showed up, eyes shining, whispering, "You're flying, baby." Amara felt it too, a high she hadn't known since diagnosis day. 10 grand could bankroll, months of chemo, maybe even a real future. She floated on that cloud for hours, the gallery's hum drowning out the ache in her bones. Buyers called her a genius, a survivor, their cash stacking higher than she'd ever dreamed. She pictured Grayson fuming, his empire dented by her shine, and it felt like victory. Then the lights flickered and a bullhorn blared outside. This is Jacksonville PD. Exit the building. Amara froze as cops stormed in, badges flashing, boots stomping across her sanctuary. The lead officer, a squat man with a buzz cut, barked, "We got a tip, stolen goods, everyone out." Buyers scattered, clutching paintings they hadn't paid for, their awe turning to panic. Amara's heart slammed against her ribs as cops ripped canvases from the walls, tossing them into evidence bags. "These are mine," she shouted, lunging forward, but a female officer shoved her back, her grip bruising Amara's arm. "Stand down, kid." Darius pushed through, his voice thunder. "What's this about?" The buzz-cut cop smirked, holding up a warrant. "Anonymous tip says this art's hot. You're detained, Kane." Handcuffs clicked around Darius's wrists, his jaw tight as they hauled him out. Amara's world tilted, the gallery emptying faster than it had filled. Tanya grabbed her, pulling her to a corner as cops bagged the last of her work. "They can't do this," Amara choked. "But they could, and they were. She'd sold 10,000 worth, sure, but now her art was evidence. Her cash frozen in limbo." Hours later, alone in the trashed gallery, she fired up her phone, live streaming the chaos: toppled easels, torn sketches, the warrant dangling from a cop's hand. "This ain't theft," she said, voice shaking. "It's Grayson. He's combing for me 'cause I won't break." The video blew up, thousands watching, hashtags spiking, hashtag justice for Amara, hashtag Grayson corrupt. Comments poured in, outrage igniting online, and by dawn, the pressure hit. The precinct caved, releasing Dryas with a gruff misunderstanding. Her art returned in crumpled heaps. They celebrated at the apartment, Tanya frying chicken, Dryas cracking a rare laugh. "We beat him," he said, clinking a soda can against hers. Amara nodded, forcing a smile. The 10 grand still hers, the gallery hers again. She'd won, hadn't she? Then the gut punch landed. Tanya flipped on the TV. A local news ticker scrolling. Jacksonville artist confesses to fraud. Amara's stomach dropped as a grainy video played, her face distorted, her voice dubbed saying, "I fake it all. The art, the cancer, everything." The anchor's voice dripped scorn. Amara Jackson, exposed as a scam, funded by tech mogul Darius Kane. It was a lie, a brutal edit, but it spread like poison. Her phone lit up with hate. "Liar. Thief. Disgusting." Tanya gasped. "That ain't you." Amara knew it wasn't. But the damage was done. Buyers demanded refunds. The gallery's line went dead. Her name trashed overnight. She stared at the screen. The victory from hours ago dissolving into ash worse than the Riverside fire. Grayson hadn't just hit her art this time. He'd torched her soul. Darius slammed a fist on the table, his voice low. "He's playing dirty now." Amara nodded, her eyes dry but burning. She'd climbed higher than ever, only to crash harder, the city swallowing her whole again. "Hey, what do you think about Grayson's latest move? Comment number 1 if you think this guy's pure evil needs to be stopped. Or number 2 if you'd fight back like Amara. Smash that like button if you're rooting for her to rise again, and hit subscribe to catch every twist of this wild ride. Grayson's not done, but neither is she. How far would you go to protect your dreams from a monster like him? Speaking of monsters, what's Grayson cooking up next to keep Amara down? Stick around to find out. Amara Jackson hunched over the kitchen table in their dim Jacksonville apartment, her bony fingers gripping a chipped mug of cold tea. The tin box of $10,000 shoved under a stack of junk mail. The TV blared in the corner, its volume low, but the sting of that fake confession video still screaming in her ears. "I faked it all," her distorted voice had said. A lie Grayson's cronies had stitched together to shred her name. Her phone buzzed nonstop, hate mail piling up like a digital avalanche. Fraud, waste of space. Go back where you came from, each word carved into her, sharper than the chemo needles bruising her arms. She'd been a prodigy. Yesterday, 10 grand in her pocket, the Kane Gallery buzzing with her light. Now, she was trash again, the city's punching bag, her victory torched by a smear she couldn't outrun. Tanya hovered nearby, her diner apron still on, her voice trembling. "We'll fix this, baby. People can't believe that garbage." But Amara saw the doubt in her mom's eyes, the fear that Jacksonville had already made up its mind. She barely slept, the leukemia dragging her deeper into exhaustion, her skin clammy under a threadbare blanket. Daylight crept through the plywood-covered window, casting jagged shadows over her sketches scattered on the floor. She wanted to paint, to fight back, but her hands shook too hard, her spirit cracked by the weight of it all. Then Darius Kane banged on the door, his knock sharp and urgent. Tanya let him in. His black polo rumpled, his eyes bloodshot like he'd been up all night to. "We're suing Grayson," he said, slamming a folder onto the table. "Defamation, harassment, the works. I got lawyers on it." Amara sat up, her pulse flickering. "Can we win?" Darius nodded, fierce. "We've got the live stream, the gallery footage. That video's a fake, and we'll prove it." By noon, his legal team filed papers, and 2 days later, a judge slapped Grayson with a restraining order. No contact, No stunts, 500 feet minimum. The news hit online, a small tide turning. Some fans tweeting, knew she was real. Amara exhaled, a fragile hope flickering. Maybe she could climb out of this pit. She started selling. Again, quietly, no gallery this time. Darius set up a backroom deal with a local cafe, her art slipping out under the radar. $500 here, 1,000 there. It wasn't the 10 grand glory, but it scraped enough for her next chemo drip, scheduled for Friday. She painted. In bursts, her easel wedged between the couch and the wall. Her strokes jagged with defiance, deep browns clashing with electric yellows. A storm she couldn't voice. Tanya watched, her shifts at the diner stretching longer to cover rent, her smiles forced. "You're tough, baby," she'd say. But Amara felt the strain, the way her mom's shoulders slumped. The restraining order held Grayson off, sure, but the hate mail didn't stop, and the hospital bills loomed like vultures. She clung to the cash, to Darius's promise, telling herself she'd won a round. The cafe sales ticked up, whispers of her comeback spreading, and she dared to believe it. She was still in the fight. Then the rug ripped out. Tanya got a call, mid-shift, her voice shaking when she burst through the door that night. "They're holding your treatment, Amara." She dropped her purse, her face ashen. "Hospital says we're high risk. Payments on review." Amara's stomach plummeted, her mug slipping to the floor, tea pooling around her socks. "What?" "We paid." Tanya nodded, frantic. "I called. Some admin flagged us. Says there's discrepancies. Won't say more." Amara's mind raced to Grayson, his smirk, his reach. She grabbed her phone, dialing the hospital, her voice cracking as she begged, "We've got 10 grand. Check the account." The clerk's tone was ice. "Under review." Could be weeks. Weeks she didn't have, not with her counts dropping, her fevers spiking. Tanya quit the diner that night, no notice. Her boss yelling as she stormed out to stay home with Amara, who could barely stand some days. The 10,000 sat useless, a taunt in a system rigged to choke her out. Darius dug in, furious, tracking the admin's trail. He found it, a woman named Carla Hayes, Grayson's old college buddy, now running the hospital's billing. He leaked it to a local blog. Photos of them grinning at a fundraiser, proof of the tie. The story blew up, #GraysonGate trending, and Carla was fired by week's end. Her review scrapped. Amara's treatment resumed, a needle sliding into her vein as she stared at the ceiling. Relief bitter on her tongue. She painted again, slow but steady. Her latest piece a swirl of crimson and ash, a silent scream at Grayson's games. Darius dropped by, his grin back. "He's slippin', kid. We're wearing him down." She nodded, her hands steadier, the cafe sales creeping up. Tanya found a part-time gig, enough to keep the lights on, and Amara let herself hope again. The hospital's green light a fragile win. She dodged his latest punch, hadn't she? The hate mail slowed, her art moved, and she felt the tide shift. Then the floor caved in. Amara woke to Tanya's sobs echoing from the kitchen. Her mom crumpled over the table, a crumpled eviction notice in her fist. "Grayson's company," she choked out, pointing to the logo, Grayson Properties. "They bought the building last month, saying we're late on rent we ain't late on." Amara staggered over, her vision blurring as she read it. "Vacate. By Friday, non-compliance." They'd paid every dime, but Grayson's firm claimed a clerical error, demanding proof they couldn't produce fast enough. Her chest heaved, the 10,000 useless against a landlord who owned the game. Tanya's voice broke. "Where we going, baby?" Amara stared at the notice, then at her canvases. The hospital bracelet still dangling from her wrist. Grayson hadn't just delayed her chemo, he'd ripped their home out from under them. She'd fought back, won the treatment battle, only to lose the war for a roof. Darius's lawsuit, the restraining order, all dust now. She sank beside Tanya, the eviction notice crumpling in her grip, her mind spinning. How many more hits could she take? The apartment felt like a tomb, the air heavy with defeat. Tanya called shelters, her voice hollow, while Amara sat frozen, the leukemia gnawing harder without a place to rest. Grayson's shadow stretched longer than she'd imagined, his hospital play just a warm-up for this. She thought of the cafe, the art still selling, but it wouldn't cover a new lease, not yet. Darius's words rang hollow now. "We're in." Him down didn't mean much when they were out on the street. She'd climbed from the fake video's wreckage, scraped back her dignity, only to watch Grayson strike deeper, a blade to her family's heart. The restraining order kept him 500 feet away, sure, but his money reached everywhere. A noose tightening around her neck, she hugged Tanya, their tears mixing. The eviction notice a final slap. She'd survived the fire, the raid, the smear, but this cut to the bone, and Grayson wasn't done carving. Amara Jackson curled up on a stained mattress in a Jacksonville shelter, her frail body shivering under a scratchy blanket that smelled of bleach and despair. The eviction had hit fast, Grayson Properties locking them out by Friday noon. Their furniture dumped on the curb like garbage. Tanya had scrambled, finding the spot a cramped room with peeling paint and flickering fluorescents, shared with 3 other families. The tin box of $10,000 sat wedged under Amara's arm, its weight a cruel joke now. It couldn't buy a home, couldn't stop the leukemia clawing deeper into her marrow. Her skin burned with fever, her breath shallow, the chemo delay from Grayson's hospital stunt leaving her weaker than ever. Tanya sat beside her, stroking her braids, her eyes red from crying over the phone to shelters that were full. "We'll get out soon, baby," she whispered, but her voice trembled, hollowed out by exhaustion. Amara nodded, too tired to argue, her mind replaying the eviction notice's cold print, Grayson's logo branding their ruin. The shelter buzzed with noise, a baby wailing, a man coughing, the clatter of plastic trays as dinner a watery soup passed. Around, Amara couldn't eat, her stomach churning from sickness and rage. She'd fought so hard, scraped back from the fake video, the hospital block, only to land here. Homeless, her art useless against Grayson's machine. Her sketches lay stuffed in a garbage bag by the bed, their edges curling, her dreams as crumpled as the paper. Then her phone buzzed, Darius Kane's name flashing through the gloom. "I'm outside," he texted. She dragged herself up, her legs wobbling, and Tanya helped her shuffle to the shelter's grimy entrance. Darius stood there, backlight by the Bentley's headlights, his face grim. "This ain't right," he said, voice low. "I got you an apartment, 2 bedrooms north side, paid up for 6 months. Amara's chest tightened, hope flickering through the haze. "And more," he added, "a pop-up exhibit tomorrow. We're hitting back." By morning, they'd moved into the new place, a modest brick unit with clean floors and a view of a scraggly oak. Amara's strength was shot, but Darius's gift lit a spark. The exhibit went up at a vacant lot near the river, a tent rigged with string lights, her salvaged art glowing against the dusk. Crowds swarmed, drawn by Darius's name and the hashtag Justice for Amara buzz, their wallets open. She sold $15,000 worth in hours, her voice hoarse as she thanked buyers, her hands shaking with cold cash. Tanya beamed, snapping pics, whispering, "You're unstoppable, baby." The leukemia still gnawed, but the money meant treatments, food, a roof. Grayson hadn't crushed her yet. Online, the exhibit trended, clips of her smiling beside canvases drowning out the fake. Videos echo. She sat on a folding chair, catching her breath, the night air cool against her fevered skin. 15 grand felt like armor, a shield against the next blow. Then Grayson struck again. A city truck rolled up mid-event, its horn blaring, a weary official in a polo stepping out with a clipboard. "Health hazard," he barked, slapping a notice on the tent pole. "Unpermitted event, contaminated goods, shut it down." Amara's jaw dropped, her buyers freezing mid-transaction. "Contaminated?" she rasped, staggering forward. The man smirked, his eyes flicking over her. "Art's a risk, they say. Could be toxic." It was absurd, a lie so blatant it stung. But the crowd murmured, some backing off. She knew Grayson's hand in this, his money twisting the city's strings. Darius stormed over, phone out, calling in favors. "This is bullshit," he snapped, dialing a councilwoman he knew. Hours later, after heated calls and a viral clip of the shutdown, the order lifted. Darius's pull overturned it, the official slinking away. Amara exhaled, the tent buzzing again, her sails holding. She dodged another hit, her 15,000 intact, Grayson's jab deflected. She leaned against Tanya, whispering, "We're okay," and meant it, the night ending. With her head high. But the real blow waited. She'd crashed in the new apartment. The exhibit's rush fading into bone-deep fatigue when footsteps crunched outside. She woke to a thud, a muffled curse, her heart lurching as she stumbled to the window. 3. Shadows loomed in the alley below, hulking figures in hoodies, their breaths fogging the night air. Grayson's goons, she'd know that vibe anywhere, the same menace from the Riverside fire. They spotted her, one pointing, and charged. Tanya screamed from the bedroom, "Amara, get back!" But the door splintered open, wood cracking under. A boot. She bolted, her frail legs buckling, but they caught her in the hall. Meaty hands slamming her against the wall. "Stay down, girl," one growled. His fist crashing into her ribs, pain exploding white-hot. Another kicked her legs out, her knees slamming concrete. Blood trickling from her lip as a third loomed, his breath sour. "Grayson says hi," he sneered. Landing a punch to her gut, she crumpled. Gasping, the world spinning as they trashed the place, overturning furniture, smashing her easel. Tanya lunged from the bedroom, swinging a lamp, but they shoved her down. Her cry piercing the chaos, Amara crawled, her nails clawing the floor, her vision blurring as blows rained down. Then headlights flared, Darius's Bentley screeching. Up, his shout cutting through. "Get off her!" He tackled one, fists flying. The others bolting as sirens wailed in the distance. Amara coughed blood, her body a map of bruises, but she was alive. Darius panting beside her, Tanya sobbing as she cradled her head. Cops arrived, too late again, scribbling notes with bored eyes. "No IDs," they muttered. Leaving the wreckage, Amara's latest painting, a bold clash of teal and rust, was gone, stolen. A trophy for Grayson's goons. She sat there, battered. The $15,000 still hers, but her spirit fractured. Darius helped her to the couch, his voice tight. "They're animals," she nodded. Pain throbbing in waves, her defiance flickering, but not dead. She'd risen from the eviction, sold out the exhibit, only to be beaten bloody in her own home. The shelter had been grim, but this was worse. Grayson's hate wasn't just systemic now. It was flesh and bone, fists and boots. Her ribs ached, her lips swelled, but she refused a hospital. The cash couldn't bleed out on an ER bill. Tanya taped her up, tears streaming, muttering, "We can't keep doing this." Amara stared at the splintered door, the stolen canvas's absence a gut punch. She'd thought the restraining order, the exhibit win, had Grayson on the ropes, but he'd hit harder. Lower, a predator cornering prey. Darius paced, phone to his ear, vowing lawyers, security. "Revenge. He won't touch you again," he said, but Amara's eyes stayed on the alley, the shadows still lurking in her mind. She'd survived. Sure, but at what cost? The leukemia was a slow killer, but Grayson was fast, and he wasn't stopping. Her hands flexed, itching for a brush. A fight, something to prove she wasn't broken yet. Amara Jackson lay in a sterile Jacksonville hospital bed, her bruised ribs screaming under tight bandages, her swollen lip throbbing with every shallow breath. The alley beating had landed her here. Grayson's goons leaving her a crumpled heap. In her own apartment, her stolen painting a taunt she couldn't shake. Her skin burned with fever, the leukemia feasting on her weakened frame, but her eyes stayed sharp, glaring at the four dripping into her arm. Tanya sat beside her, clutching her hand, her face etched with exhaustion after a sleepless night, begging nurses for updates. "You're still here, baby," she whispered, voice cracking. But Amara felt the weight of every blow, every loss piling up. The $15,000 from the pop-up exhibit sat safe in Darius's care. But her body was a battlefield now, and Grayson had drawn first blood. Doctors muttered about fractures, internal bruising. A miracle she hadn't bled out on that concrete floor. She'd refused to break, but her limits loomed closer than ever. Word of the attack spread fast. By morning, her phone buzzed with notifications. Strangers posting pics of her battered face snapped by a neighbor during the chaos under captions like Grayson's war on Amara. The images went viral, a raw, ugly truth sparking outrage across Jacksonville. Protests erupted outside the hospital, dozens then hundreds chanting her name. Signs scrawled with "Justice now" and "Stop Grayson." Amara watched from her window, her chest tight, their voices a lifeline piercing the fog of painkillers. Darius stormed in, his black polo streaked with sweat, his eyes blazing. "This ends now," he said, slamming a laptop onto the tray table. "I'm bankrolling an auction. Your art, prime spotlight. We're turning this into a movement." She nodded, her split lip stinging as she rasped, "Do it." He'd saved her before, but this felt bigger, a war cry she couldn't refuse. The auction launched 3 days later. Amara discharged with a fistful of meds and a walker she hated but needed. Darius rented a warehouse downtown, its brick walls lined with her salvaged sketches, spotlights casting jagged shadows over her work. Crowds packed in, a mix of activists, art buffs, and locals fed up with Grayson's reign. Their energy electric. She sat in a folding chair, her bruised face a badge of survival. Watching bids soar, a teal spiral fetched $5,000, a rust-streaked abstract hit 10, the total climbing to $20,000 in hours. Cameras rolled, news crews circling, Darius hyping her story. This girl's a fighter and Grayson's a coward. The crowd roared, fists pumping, her name echoing off the rafters. Online, #AmaraLives trended. Memes mocking Grayson flooding feeds, his empire wobbling under the spotlight. She gripped Tanya's hand, a faint smile cracking her pain. The cash a shield for more chemo, a chance to breathe. Grayson was a laughing stock now, wasn't he? Then the tide turned. Darius's phone rang mid-auction, his face darkening as he stepped aside. He returned, jaw tight, whispering, "They're framing me." Tax evasion, accounts frozen, Amara's stomach sank, the room spinning as he explained. Grayson's lawyers had filed charges, claiming Darius dodged millions, a lie backed by forged docs. The auction cash was hers, sure, but his fortune, her lifeline, was locked, cops already raiding his office. She staggered to her feet, ignoring the walker, her voice hoarse. "We can't stop," Darius nodded, rallying the crowd, but the air shifted, uncertainty creeping in. She refused to crumble. Sketching from her hospital bed that night, her hands trembling over fresh paper. Buyers slipped cash under the table, 1,000 here, to there, enough to scrape by. Days later, Darius's lawyers cleared him, the charges exposed as bunk, his accounts thawing. They staged a comeback show at the warehouse, smaller but fierce. Her art selling again, the 20,000 holding strong. She leaned on Tanya, whispering, "We're back." The crowd's cheers a balm on her wounds. But Grayson wasn't done. The warehouse emptied late. Amara limping to the Bentley with Darius and Tanya, when a cop car screeched up, lights flashing. 2 officers leapt out, one weary, one hulking, their faces hard. "Amara Jackson, you're under arrest," the weary one snapped, yanking her arms behind her. She yelped, pain shooting through her ribs, Tanya shouting, "What for?" The hulking cop smirked, pulling a baggie of white powder from her backpack. Planted, obvious, but damning, possession, he said, cuffing her wrists tight. Darius lunged, "That's bullshit, and you know it." But they shoved him back, dragging Amara to the car. Her head spun, the leukemia and bruises blurring her fight. But she saw Grayson's hand, the goons, the framing. Now this, she'd rallied. A city raised 20 grand, only to land in juvie. A delinquent label slapped on her file no one questioned. Tanya sobbed, Darius yelling after her, "We'll fix this," as the car peeled out. Her art left scattered on the pavement. Juvie was a concrete cage, its gray walls cold against her fevered skin, the bunk hard under her aching bones. Guards barked orders, their eyes sliding over her like she was nothing. A black girl caught in a trap she didn't set. The 20,000 sat untouchable. Her chemo stalled, her health sliding as Grayson's lie took root. She curled on the cot, her breath ragged, the beatings pain flaring with every move. Darius's promise echoed, but the cell's silence mocked it. She'd risen from the alley, turned her bruises into a rally, only to be slammed down harder. A system rigged to bury her alive. Her hands itched for a pencil, a canvas, anything to fight back. But the guards had stripped her bare, her sketches confiscated, her spirit teetering. Grayson hadn't just hit her body this time. He'd locked her future in a cage, and the key was his. Amara Jackson sat on the edge of a rusted cot in the Jacksonville Juvenile Detention Center, her bruised ribs aching against the thin gray jumpsuit, her wrists raw from cuffs that had bitten too deep. The cell smelled of mildew and sweat, its concrete walls pressing in, the dim buzz of a flickering bulb her only company. The planted drugs Grayson's latest knife had landed her here. The $20,000 from the auction locked away in Darius's safe, useless now as her chemo stopped cold. Her fever spiked, sweat soaking her braids, the leukemia gnawing unchecked without treatment. She coughed, a wet rasp that echoed, her body folding under the weight of illness and betrayal. Guards paced outside, their boots thudding, their voices gruff as they swapped shifts, none sparing her a glance. She'd rallied a city, turned her pain into power, only to rot in this hole. A delinquent tag slapped on her like a brand. Days blurred into nights, her strength fading fast. Meals came on scratched trays, stale bread, watery grits she couldn't choke down. Her stomach twisting from nausea and rage, she scratched at the cot's frame with a jagged nail, tracing faint lines, a ghost of her art, her hands desperate. To create even here, Tanya visited once, her face pressed to the scratched plexiglass, tears streaking as she mouthed, "We're fighting this." But her mom's voice trembled, the shelter they'd fled now a grim memory compared to this cage. Amara nodded, forcing a weak smile, but her chest hollowed out. The auction's roar, the protests, all drowned by Grayson's reach, his goons, framing her with a baggie she'd never touched. She'd risen from the beating, only to sink lower, the system swallowing her whole. Then Darius moved. He stormed in on day 5. A top-tier attorney at his side, a weary woman named Lena with steel gray hair and a glare that could melt iron. "We've got proof," Lena said through the glass, her voice crisp. Security cam from the warehouse caught a cop planting the stash. It's Grayson's payroll. Amara's pulse flickered, hope clawing through the haze. Darius leaned in, his eyes fierce. "You're out soon, kid. Hold on." The lawyer filed motions, fast and brutal, the footage leaking online by nightfall. #Free Amara spiked, protests swelling outside juvie, voices chanting her name through the barred windows. The judge caved, releasing her after a week. The charges dropped, her record scrubbed. She stumbled out, frail and pale, Tanya catching her. In a sobbing hug, Darius's Bentley idling nearby. "We beat him," he said, his grin tight but real. She nodded, her legs trembling, the air sweet despite the ache. She was free, wasn't she? The wind soured fast. Back at the apartment, Tanya's phone rang. A clipped voice on the line shattering the quiet. "It's Luis," she gasped, dropping. The receiver, Amara's cousin, undocumented, working odd jobs to send cash home, had been nabbed by ICE that morning. Grayson's doing his firm tipped off feds. A concerned citizen report linking Luis to Amara's drug bust. Deportation papers were signed before they could blink. Luis gone by dusk, his quiet laugh erased from their lives. Amara sank to the floor, guilt choking her, her voice a whisper, "This is my fault." Tanya shook her head. "No, baby, it's him," but the words rang hollow. Luis had been her rock, sneaking her candy during chemo. His deportation a blade Grayson twisted deeper than the beating. The family fractured. Tanya's calls to lawyers useless, Amara's fight costing more than cash now. She spiraled, the leukemia flaring without steady treatment, her fever spiking to 103. Darius dragged her to the hospital, forcing a drip, but her spirit cracked, guilt and loss gnawing harder than the illness. He pushed forward, funding a new exhibit at a rented loft. Her art scraped from the warehouse, wreck drawing crowds again. She painted through the haze, her latest a stark clash of black and gold, grief bleeding onto canvas. Sales climbed, 5,000, then 10, buyers whispering her name with awe. Online, the deportation-fueled outrage, #Grayson hates trending, her story a rallying cry. She stood at the loft's edge, watching buyers, her walker steadying her, a flicker of pride cutting through the pain. Luis was gone, but she'd risen again, her art a weapon, hadn't it? Then Grayson's next punch landed. A news vent parked outside the loft, a slick anchor spouting lies. Amara Jackson tied to gang activity, sources say, his media cronies. Spun a tale, doctored pics showing her with known felons, random kids from the shelter. Faces blurred, her drug past reborn. Death threats flooded her phone. Gang bitch, you're done. Some with her address, others promising blood. Tanya yanked the curtains shut, her voice shaking. They're lying again, Amara nodded. But the damage roared, buyers peeling off, the loft emptying as fear took root. Darius cursed. He's desperate, but Amara saw the truth. Grayson's hate was a hydra, each head uglier than the last. She'd escaped juvie, rebuilt her art, only to face a mob now, his lies turning her city against her. She fled to a safe house that night, a dingy motel Darius secured. Her walker clattering on the stairs, Tanya clutching her arm. The exhibit cash sat in a duffel, but her name was poison again. Her fight drowned in threats. The motel room stank of mold, its beige walls stained, the hum of a busted AC her only sound. Amara sat on the lumpy bed, her breath shallow, the leukemia and fear a twin chokehold. Tanya paced, muttering prayers, her phone dead from pleading with cops who wouldn't come. Darius bunkered down, vowing to trace the leak, but Amara's eyes stayed on the window, the dark beyond it alive with shadows. She'd rallied from the arrest, turned loss into art, but Grayson's media storm hit harder, a lie so loud it buried her truth. The gang label stuck, a scarlet letter no protest could erase. Her fans shrinking under death threats she couldn't dodge. She hugged her knees, the walker beside her a cruel prop, her mind racing. How much more could she lose before the leukemia finished what Grayson started? Amara Jackson hunched on the edge of a creaky motel bed, her frail frame swallowed by a faded green quilt, the hum of a rattling AC unit barely masking Jacksonville's distant sirens. The safe house, a dingy room off I-95, was her last refuge, its moldy walls and chipped paint a far cry from the apartment Grayson's eviction had stolen. Her walker leaned against the bed, a constant jab at her crumbling strength, while the leukemia chewed deeper, her fever spiking to 104, sweat soaking her tank top. Tanya sat cross-legged on the floor, her eyes hollow as she scrolled through death threats still pouring in. Gang trash. Watch your back. Grayson's media smear turning strangers into hunters. The duffel with $10,000 from the loft exhibit sat by her feet, a lifeline she couldn't touch with cops and bigots circling. She'd escaped juvie, mourned Luce's deportation, only to hide here. Her art a whisper in a city screaming her down. Darius Kane slipped in at dawn, his black hoodie blending with the shadows. A stack of canvases under his arm, her salvaged work from the loft. We're not done, he said, voice low but fierce, setting up a makeshift studio in the corner. I'll smuggle these out, sell quiet. Grayson's choking, but he ain't one. Amara nodded, her hands trembling as she grabbed a brush, painting through the haze, stark whites slashed with violent reds. A silent howl against the threats. Darius worked fast, slipping pieces to underground buyers' cafes, barbershops, backrooms cash, trickling in 5,000, then 10, climbing to 30,000 over weeks. She painted from the bed, her body a wreck but her spirit clawing back. Each sale a brick in a wall against Grayson's empire. Online, boycotts hit his properties. Hashtag Grayson Falls trending as whispers of her resilience spread. She gripped the walker, watching Darius count the cash, a flicker of triumph cutting through the fever. 30 grand could rebuild, couldn't it? Then Grayson's claws tightened. A sleek sedan rolled up to the motel one muggy afternoon, a suited man stepping out. Grayson's lawyer, all sharp cheekbones and colder eyes. He slapped a court order on the door, seize all earnings as crime proceeds. Tied to the fake drug bust and gang lies, cops swarmed, ripping the duffel from Tanya's hands. 30,000 vanishing in minutes, their shouts drowning her. Please, Amara staggered forward. That's mine. But a beefy officer shoved her back, her walker clattering as she hit the wall, breath knocked out. Darius lunged, fists clenched, but the lawyer smirked. Legal, Kane, step off. They left with the cash, the room trashed. Amara broke again, her art's blood money stolen by a judge Grayson owned. She sank to the floor, coughing blood, the leukemia and despair a twin vice. Tanya sobbed. We're done. But Amara shook her head, rasping, not yet. Darius fought back. Leaking Grayson's corruption to a rogue reporter, tax records, bribes, the lawyer's ties to the judge. The story exploded. Headlines screaming Grayson's dirty game. Protests flaring outside his downtown tower. Public tide turned, buyers creeping back, slipping cash to Darius under Grayson's nose. Amara painted faster, her latest a chaotic swirl of silver and black, defiance in every stroke. Sales surged, 15,000, then 20, her art a wildfire. No court could douse. She leaned on the walker, watching Darius stash the new haul. Her voice a whisper, he's slipping. The motel's grime faded under the rush. Her fever easing with a stolen hospital drip Darius bribed a nurse for. Grayson's empire cracked, boycotts biting deeper, his face gaunt on news clips. She'd risen from the smear, clawed back her ground, hadn't she? Then death came knocking. A rally hit Jacksonville's streets, hundreds marching for Amara. Her art plastered on signs, bold purples, fierce yellows, her name a battle cry. She watched from the motel window, Tanya's arm around her, pride swelling despite the pain. Darius spoke, megaphone blaring. She's unstoppable. The crowd roared, a sea of fists, until a crack split the era sniper's shot, the bullet grazing Amara's arm as glass shattered inward. She screamed, collapsing, blood streaking. Her sleeve, Tanya yanking her down as chaos erupted outside. The shooter vanished, but a note fluttered through the broken window. This ends now. Grayson's scrawl unmistakable. She clutched her arm, the sting sharp but shallow. Her heart pounding as Darius burst in, face ashen. He's gone rogue, he said, helping her up, her walker useless in the panic. She'd survived, but the near miss chilled her soul, a promise of worse in Grayson's ink. The motel turned fortress. Darius posting guards ex-cops he trusted while Tanya patched Amara's arm with a trembling first aid kit. The 30,000 was hers again. The court order reversed under public fury, but the bullet's graze was a line in the sand. She painted that night, her brush slashing crimson arcs, fear and fury blending on canvas. Grayson hadn't just stolen her cash or slandered her name. He'd aimed to kill. His empire crumbling, but his hate unbowed. She leaned against the wall, her breath ragged, the leukemia a slow burn under the adrenaline. Darius paced, phone glued to his ear, vowing, "We'll bury him." Amara nodded, her arm throbbing, her resolve steeling. She dodged the shot, held the cash, but Grayson's desperation was a beast unleashed, and she was its prey. All right, what's your take on this insane twist? Comment number 1 if you think Grayson's crossed a line he can't uncross. Or number 2 if you'd take a stand like Darius to protect Amara. Hit that like button if her grit's got you hooked. And smash subscribe to see how she fights back from this cliffhanger. Grayson's playing with bullets now to far, or just the start? Tell me below, now. Picture this, Amara's got blood on her sleeve and fire in her veins. What's her next move against a man who'll kill to win? Stay tuned to find out. Amara Jackson sat propped against the motel's chipped headboard, her bandaged arm throbbing where the sniper's bullet had grazed her, a jagged red line stark against her dark skin. The room buzzed with tension, the broken window taped with, a garbage bag flapping in the humid Jacksonville night. Grayson's note, "This ends now," crumpled in her fist. Her walker stood crooked by the bed, a crutch she loathed but clung to, her leukemia-ridden body trembling from fever and fury. Tanya knelt beside her, dabbing the wound with a damp cloth, her hands shaking as she muttered, "He can't keep getting away with this." The $30,000 from Darius's underground sales sat in a duffel under the mattress, a lifeline Grayson had tried to sever with a bullet. She dodged death, held her ground, but his desperation roared louder than ever, a beast. Cornered but still clawing, Darius paced the room's edge, his hoodie soaked from running the streets, rallying support after the rally's chaos. "We're ending this," he said, voice a low growl, pulling out his phone to livestream. The feed crackled to life, his face filling thousands of screens as he held up Grayson's note. The scrawl undeniable, "Victor Grayson tried to kill Amara Jackson tonight," he boomed, panning to her bruised, defiant glare. Her art's a threat to his hate, and he's scared. The internet erupted, #Grayson shot her spiking. Protests swelling outside his tower, a sea of voices chanting. Her name, hours later, Cops swarmed Grayson's mansion, cuffs snapping around his wrists. His face twisted in a snarl as cameras flashed. Amara watched from the motel, her breath hitching. The news ticker blazing. Real estate mogul arrested for attempted murder. Darius grinned, fierce. Got him. She nodded. The 30,000 hers. The snipers miss a win hadn't. She finally broken him. The victory unraveled fast. Dawn broke over the motel. Amara sipping lukewarm water when sirens wailed again. A black SUV screeched up, disgorging the deputy mayor, a weary man named Holt with Grayson's smirk in his eyes. Public threat, he barked, flanked by cops, shoving a decree under Darius's nose. Amara Jackson's a danger to Jacksonville. We're seizing everything. They stormed in, boots smashing the doorframe, ripping canvases from the walls, slashing her latest a fierce clash of violet and bronze into ribbons. Tanya screamed, "You can't." But Holt sneered, "Grayson's locked up." "But I'm not. She's done." Amara staggered up, her walker clattering. "That's mine." But a cop slammed her back, her ribs flaring with pain. They trashed the room, the duffel untouched, but her her soul reduced to tatters on the floor. Holt left with a laugh, the cops peeling out, leaving her gasping amid the wreckage. She sank to her knees, shards of canvas cutting her palms, blood mixing with paint as Tanya sobbed beside her. Darius cursed, kicking the wall. He's got puppets everywhere. The arrest was a feint, Grayson's empire striking through Holt. A loyal lapdog with the city's keys, her exhibit, her rally, her survival all mocked by this raid. Her art shredded like her hope. She'd thought Grayson's cuffs meant freedom, a chance to breathe. But Holt's move hit harder, a systemic gut punch no protest could dodge. Her chest heaved, the leukemia feeding on her collapse, but her eyes burned, defiance flickering through the tears. She crawled to a corner, salvaging a torn sketch. A jagged blue spiral and clutched it, whispering, "Not over." Tanya hugged, heard Darius nodding, "We'll regroup." She had the cash, the will. Couldn't she still fight? Then she struck back. Word of Holt's raid spread, her shredded art photographed by a motel clerk, the images igniting fury online. Amara rallied artists across Jacksonville, her voice hoarse over a burner phone Darius snatched from a pawn shop. "Flood the streets," she rasped, "paint everywhere." By nightfall, murals bloomed, her blues, her reds, her name in bold strokes on walls, bridges, storefronts. Hundreds joined, brushes slashing, spray cans hissing. A citywide rebellion overwhelming Holt's ban. She watched from the motel, her arm throbbing, fever spiking, but pride swelling as clips flooded feeds. Hashtag Amara everywhere. Hashtag ArtShade. Grayson's arrest fueled it, Holt's raid the spark. Her art a tidal wave no decree could stop. Darius grinned, "They can't kill this." The streets pulsed, her 30,000 a war chest now, her spirit roaring through others' hands. She'd flipped the script, hadn't she? But Grayson's fangs sank deeper. A text hit Darius's phone at midnight. Unknown number, Tanya's. "Ours, surrender or she's gone." Amara's heart stopped, her mom missing from the bathroom where she'd stepped minutes ago. She bolted up, walker crashing, screaming, "Mama." The room was empty, Tanya's scarf on the floor, a scuff mark by the door. Darius dialed cops, but Amara knew Grayson, out on bail that morning, had struck from his cell, his reach unbroken. She staggered to the window, spotting a van peeling out, Tanya's muffled cry echoing in her mind. "He's got her," she choked, collapsing, the leukemia and terror a twin chokehold. Darius caught her. "We'll find her," but her eyes stayed on the taillights, her rally's triumph ashes now. She'd flooded the city, defied Holt, only to lose Tanya. Grayson's checkmate, a blade to her throat. The motel turned war room, Darius barking orders to allies, ex-cops, hackers tracking the van's path. Amara sat frozen, her bandaged arm limp, the 30,000 useless against a kidnapping. Grayson's arrest, Holt's raid, her arts. Surge all mocked by this, a personal strike no mural could fend off. Her fever climbed, her vision blurring, but she forced herself up, rasping, "I'm going after her." Darius shook his head, "You're half dead." But she glared, "She's my mom." The streets still buzzed with her art, her name a war cry, but the van's trail was cold. Grayson's bail a loophole she hadn't seen. She'd turned Jacksonville into her canvas. Thought she'd won, only to face a ransom she couldn't pay. With paint, her hands flexed, empty without a brush, her soul teetering as the clock ticked. Amara Jackson stood trembling in the motel's trashed room, her bandaged arm hanging limp. Her walker toppled beside the bed where the duffel of $30,000 lay untouched. Tanya's scarf of faded purple scrap dangled from her fingers, the only piece of her mom left after Grayson's goons snatched her from the bathroom. The van's taillights burned into her memory. The note's threat, surrender or she's gone, pulsed in her skull. Her fever spiking to 105, sweat dripping onto the cracked linoleum. Darius Kane paced, his phone pressed to his ear, barking at contact sex cops, trackers his voice a lifeline in the chaos. "We've got a plate number," he snapped, heading west on I-10. Amara's chest heaved, the leukemia strangling her breath, but she rasped, "I'm going with you." He spun, eyes fierce. "You can't, you're a ghost already." She shook her head, braids slapping her shoulders. "She's my mom." Darius relented, bundling her into the Bentley's back seat, her walker shoved beside the duffel. The 30,000 a mute witness to her desperation. The car roared through Jacksonville's night, neon signs blurring past, her fevered gaze locked on the road. Darius's tracker, an ex-Marine named Clay Calden, warehouse off Old Kings Road. Grayson's there. Amara's stomach twisted, picturing Tanya bound, gagged, Grayson's smirk looming over her. They screeched into the lot, a derelict shell of rusted steel and broken glass squatting under a moonless sky. Darius killed the lights, whispering, "Stay here," but Amara stumbled out, her legs buckling, the walker clattering as she dragged it. "I'm ending this," she hissed, her voice a raw scrape. He cursed but followed, his shadow merging with hers as they crept toward the gaping entrance, the air thick with oil and rot. Inside, Grayson waited. He stood by a stack of crates, his gray suit rumpled from jail, his salt and pepper hair wild, a lighter flicking in his hand. Tanya knelt beside him, wrists zip-tied, her mouth taped, eyes wide with terror. Alone, painting Amara's tea landrust piece stolen in the beating leaned against a crate, its edges charred. "You're late," Grayson sneered, his voice a venomous drawl as he sparked the lighter, flames licking the canvas's corner. "Thought you'd quit after the bullet." Amara staggered forward, her walker screeching on concrete, fury drowning her pain. "Let her go," he laughed, torching the painting, its colors melting into acrid smoke. "Your kind's a stain, girl. I'll erase you all." Tanya whimpered, struggling, but his boot pinned her shoulder, a predator savoring the kill. Amara lunged, her walker slipping, but Darius charged, slamming into Grayson's crew, two hulking goons emerging from the shadows. Fists flew, grunts echoing as he tackled one, the other swinging a pipe that cracked against his ribs. Amara crawled, her nails scraping rust, her eyes locked on Tanya. Grayson smirked, pulling a sleek pistol from his jacket, its barrel glinting as he aimed at her head. "Surrender's off. Kid, you're done." Her heart stopped, time slowing, but she'd stashed a weapon, an old paintbrush sharpened to a point, tucked in her sleeve from motel nights sketching survival. She yanked it free, lunging as he turned, slashing his hand. The gun clattered, blood spurting, his howl splitting the air. "You little," he swung, backhanding her, but she held on, stabbing again, her frail arm a blur of rage. Tanya broke free, ripping the tape off, screaming, "Amara," as Darius floored the second goon, his nose bloody but grin savage. Grayson staggered, clutching his hand, but his eyes burned. Unbowed, sirens wailed, distant then close, red and blue flashing through shattered windows as cops swarmed in Clay's tip paying off. They tackled Grayson, his wrists cuffed again, his snarls fading as they dragged him out. Amara collapsed beside Tanya, her mom's arms tight around her, sobs shaking them both. Darius limped over, panting. "You're insane, kid," she coughed, blood flecking her lips, but smiled, faint and fierce. The warehouse stank of burnt paint and victory, her painting ash, but Tanya alive. Grayson was gone, locked up tight this time. She'd traded herself, saved her mom, hadn't she won? The relief shattered, cops milled around, taking statements, when one a lanky rookie with Grayson's cold stare muttered into his radio, "Eyeing Amara." Hours later, at the precinct, his captain slapped charges on her, assault with a deadly weapon. Grayson's lawyer, a slick vulture in pinstripes, twisted it fast, claiming she'd attacked first. The brush a shank, her self-defense a lie, evidence vanished the gun. The goon's pipe, Grayson's pull-bending truth even from a cell. Amara sat cuffed in an interrogation room, her fever raging, her arms bandaged soaked red. Tanya safe but sobbing outside. Darius stormed in, "This is bullshit." But the captain shrugged, her word against his. She was hauled to a holding cell, her walker confiscated, her body slumping on a bench as the door clanged shut. The 30,000 waited. Tanya breathed, but Amara's freedom burned up in Grayson's last gasp. The cell was a coffin, its steel walls icy against her fevered skin, the leukemia a slow hammer pounding her chest. She'd faced Grayson head-on, disarmed him, saved her mom, only to land here, his lawyers spin a noose she couldn't slip. Her breath rattled, shallow and sharp, the brush's blood still under her nails. A mark of her fight, now her chains. Darius worked outside, calling lawyers, rallying the streets. His voice muffled through the bars, "We'll fix this, Amara." Tanya's cries echoed, "My baby," but the precinct hummed with indifference. Grayson's shadow stretching even from lockup. She'd flooded Jacksonville with her art, turned a sniper's miss into a stand, traded herself for Tanya. But this was the edge, her body and soul teetering, the war's cost carved into her bones. Amara Jackson slumped against the cold steel bench of a Jacksonville holding cell, her fevered body trembling under the jail's harsh fluorescent glare, her bandaged arm oozing red where the sniper's graze had torn reopened during the warehouse fight. The assault charge Grayson's lawyer's twisted lie had locked her here. Her sharpened paintbrush branded a deadly weapon. Her desperate stab to save Tanya spun into a crime. Her walker was gone, confiscated by sneering guards, leaving her to crawl or collapse, the leukemia gnawing her bones with every ragged breath. The cell's damp walls reeked of urine and rust, her $30,000 safe with Darius, but useless behind bars. Her chemo stalled again as her counts plummeted. Tanya was free, sobbing outside the precinct, her voice a faint wail through the concrete. But Amara's freedom dangled by a thread, Grayson's reach slithering even from his own cell. She'd traded herself, disarmed him, only to land here was this her end. The trial loomed fast, a circus set for Monday, just 3 days away. Darius Kane turned the streets into a war zone, his network of Allah's artists, activists, hackers flooding Jacksonville with her story. Murals of her face bloomed on every corner, bold strokes of teal and gold framing her bruised defiance. Her name a global chant online, hashtag Amara fights, hashtag Grayson falls. The warehouse clash went viral. Shaky phone clips of her slashing Grayson's hand, Tanya's rescue, his arrest proof of her truth battling his lies. Darius stood outside the jail, megaphone blaring, "She's a hero, not a thug." Crowds swelled, thousands strong, their roar shaking the precinct's windows as Amara curled tighter, her fever spiking to 106, her vision blurring. She'd flooded the city with art, faced a bullet, saved her mom, but the gavel loomed. Grayson's lawyer a vulture circling her corpse. Court day dawned brutal, the sun scorching Jacksonville's courthouse steps where protesters clashed with cops. Signs waving, "Free Amara now." She shuffled in, cuffed and limping. No walker, her jumpsuit hanging off her skeletal frame. Tanya's gasp echoing from the gallery. The judge, a grizzled man with a buzz cut, glared down. Grayson's lawyer smirking beside a pristine-suited victor, out on bail. His hand bandaged but his eyes venomous, assault with intent. The lawyer droned, spinning a tale of Amara. As a crazed delinquent, the brush a premeditated shank, Tanya's kidnapping unrelated. Her public defender, a frazzled kid fresh from law school, stammered self-defense. But evidence was thin, the gun vanished, witnesses bought off. Amara's chest tightened, her coughs wet and bloody. The leukemia a death knell as the room spun. She'd risen so high, only to crash here, hadn't she? Then Darius struck gold, mid-trial, as the lawyer painted her a monster. The courtroom doors banged open, a lanky figure storming in Grayson's own son, Ethan, 22. With his father's sharp jaw but haunted eyes, "I'm testifying," he snapped, shoving past bailiffs, his voice trembling but firm. The judge banged his gavel, "Order." But Ethan stood, holding a battered journal. "My dad's a racist pig. Been that way forever." Gasps rippled, Grayson's face purpling as Ethan read, decades of slurs, payoffs, threats. A hit list with Amara's name circled, dated before the sniper. He bragged about burning her booth, framing her, the bullet he wanted her dead cause. "She's black and better than him." The gallery erupted, Tanya sobbing, Darius grinning from the back. Ethan tossed the journal to the bench, checked the dates. "He's done." The courtroom froze, the judge's eyes narrowing as he flipped. Pages, Grayson's lawyer scrambling, hearsay. But the handwriting matched, forensic text summoned mid-session confirming it. Ethan kept going, voice breaking. "He beat me too, growing up. I ran, but she didn't. She fought." Amara stared, her fever blurring him into a ghost, his betrayal. Of blood flipping the case, the judge called a recess, an hour stretching eternal as she slumped in her chair, Tanya rushing to her side, whispering, "You're getting out." Evidence piled, Ethan's testimony, the journal, leaked texts from Grayson to hold ordering the raid. The prosecution folded, the lawyer's smirk wiped clean, and when court resumed, the gavel slammed, acquitted, all charges dropped. Cheers exploded, Amara's cuffs falling, her frail arms wrapping Tanya as tears soaked them both. Grayson roared, "This ain't over." But cops dragged him back to lockup, his bail revoked, his empire dust. She stumbled out, free, the steps a gauntlet of fists pumping, voices screaming her name. Darius caught her. "You did it, kid." The 30,000 was hers, but donations poured in millions worldwide. Chemo funded for years, her Art A, symbol of resistance. She leaned on Tanya, the crowd parting, her fever breaking under their heat. Galleries called, offers stacking. Her name gold now. She'd faced Brandt, the brick, the fire, the raid, juvie, a bullet, a kidnapping, and one hadn't. She that night, back at the apartment, a package arrived, no return address. Inside, a sketch, her face, eyes fierce, crossed out in red ink. Grayson's scrawl jagged beneath, "I'm still here." Her breath caught, Tanya gasping. "He's locked up," Amara stared, the leukemia a shadow beside this, her triumph. Tainted, she grabbed a lighter, torched the paper, ash curling as she whispered, "Let him try." Her hands flexed, ready to paint louder, the war's end a question mark searing her soul. Amara Jackson's journey teaches us resilience isn't just surviving, it's fighting. When the world bets against you, a 13-year-old black girl with leukemia, she turned art into a lifeline, battling not just illness, but a city steeped in systemic racism. From Officer Brent's boot smashing her stall to Victor Grayson's sniper shot, every step exposed how power preys on the vulnerable. Yet, Amara's grit-selling paintings, facing beatings, slashing Grayson with a brush shows that courage can outlast hate. Darius Kane's unwavering support proves one ally can shift the tide, amplifying her voice when silence threatened to bury it. Ethan's betrayal of his father reveals truth can crack even the thickest walls of privilege, toppling Grayson's empire from within. The story's heart lies in its brutal honesty. Racism doesn't relent. Even when you win, Amara's acquittal, and millions in donations were triumphs. But Grayson's final sketch, her face crossed out, warns that victory is fragile. It's a call to see beyond headlines, to recognize the quiet wars fought by those like Amara daily. Her brush wasn't just a weapon, it was a beacon, lighting up a world rigged to dim her. We learn that justice demands more than survival, it demands defiance, community, and unrelenting hope. So, what's your takeaway? How far would you go to stand up for someone like Amara? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Maybe number 1 if her resilience inspires you, or number 2 if Grayson's hate fuels your fire. Hit like if her comeback moved you, subscribe for more tales of grit, and share to spread her fight. Thanks for riding this roller coaster with us. Here's to painting your own victories, no matter the odds.